Hi and welcome. Today's topic is about conflict in relationships. And I'm specifically thinking about our couple relationships, but it can be any relationship essentially. And we all know that conflict is part of our human experience because we don't all think the same. And we are also unable to really communicate well so that other people understand immediately. So there's also misunderstandings that come up. So if you're in a relationship, I'm sure you have experienced that sometimes you get along really well, and other times there'll be differences in the way that you view things, or perhaps you have needs and they have a different set of needs and there might be a clash there. So everyone handles conflict differently. Some people are really conflict seeking, so they might have like that bubble of aggression. They're always looking to engage, and they're kind of an aggressive type of person when it comes to conflict. And other people are absolutely terrified. In fact, will do everything to not have any kind of confrontation. So I guess both of those extremes are probably not ideal. But I'm going to run through some of the conflict handling styles that people revert to, and maybe you can identify with one or more of those, or perhaps you can recognize that your partner is using some of these strategies. And I want to kind of give you some tools on how to optimize your outcomes when you're having conflict in relationship. And each style might be appropriate for different situations or the level of importance of something. If something's really important to you, you're likely to take a stronger stance and use a more powerful, non-negotiable kind of conflict resolution strategy. So basically, when we're in conflict, it's about our emotion. Our emotion has been activated, and it might be because there's a value or some belief or some personal trigger, or an identity thing, like if you're personally been insulted or devalued or not prioritized, or there's been some kind of infraction that you have experienced a level of hurt over. So hurt is actually underneath, self-protection, hurt, that kind of thing is underneath most conflicts. So the first style of conflict resolution is accommodating. This is where you basically put the other person's needs first. You're going to accommodate them. You put your needs last, and you just are willing to agree. So this falls into the category that we use mainly with kids, where we say pick your battles. So choose your battles. So you're going to basically say, well, I'm going to let you have this one because I don't think it's worth the pain. The pain of losing this is going to be less than the pain of going through the fight. So the downside to this one is that it's okay to use this sometimes. I mean, look, sometimes it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what the outcome is, their way, your way, whatever. However, if this happens a lot, especially in adult relationships, you're going to start feeling resentful. And I'll talk a bit more about that resentfulness later, because it actually will corrode the connection in your relationship. And we don't want that. We want to build strong, healthy, loving relationships. The second conflict resolution style or conflict handling style is avoidant. Okay, this person will likely fear confrontation, any kind of conflict, and they're just going to avoid altogether. Like, I'll do anything not to have conflict in my life. And that might mean moving away from things, evading, avoiding, they might even leave a situation or a relationship even, because they just don't want to have to deal with the conflict. So this, obviously things can be more peaceful if there's an avoidant person, but what happens is when you're not willing to have those little conflicts, the small ones that come up every day or, week, then what might happen is that it can mean that it seems like everything's fine on the surface, but then there'll be that one big unresolvable catastrophe. And like my previous relationship was like this. It was like everybody said, like, wow, you guys get on great, you never fight, blah, blah, blah. Turns out there was a bit of avoidance going on there, and then, you know, it just went from nothing to a divorce overnight. So not good to be avoidant, and it's not good to be accommodating all the time either. The third one is compromising, and this if you're aiming for a win-win, this one is probably more referred to as a lose-lose, because if both parties need to compromise, neither party is really fully satisfied. Negotiation is required, talking is required. It's kind of down to you're going to need to come to a solution with this one. So it's sort of more positive, because at least you're dealing with something, and you're going to need some higher level skills to run this, because you're going to have to like question and negotiate. So what are you willing to do, and what do you want in exchange? And, you know, if you do this, then I'll do that, and so forth. So there is an exchange happening here. However, again, if this was happening all the time, people might find that the cost of the compromise outweighed the benefits for the relationship, depending on how much compromise was actually needed. And you do see this a lot in people where there's blended families, because there's going to have to be a lot of this compromise stuff, and it can be a lose-lose instead of a win-win. However, that can also be a point of perspective. So it might come down to attitude of, why is this a problem in the first place, and can we get some support around our perspective on those things, so that it does become a win-win. The fourth one is competing. And this one is that authoritarian bully type thing. It's like that I'm digging my heels in. I'm not going to compromise. I don't even care about what anyone else thinks or feels, because I'm right, you're wrong. There's only one viewpoint. And it's basically like playing chicken, because if both parties do this, it's just going to be at a loggerhead, and there's going to be no resolution at all. If one person then backs out, that's going to be a huge accommodation from their part. There's going to most likely be huge power loss and resentment about that power loss. And I don't see that this is going to be a good long-term relationship, although a lot of people stay in relationships for a long time with somebody that is competing and will compete to win on every argument. It's not going to feel good, and one person there is being shut down continuously, crushed and devalidated. So essentially you kind of have to look at, like, why would you be in a relationship where somebody's going to be completely railroading you? That's not a balanced, healthy scenario to be in. And even if you are in that situation, or you are that person, it's not unresolvable. There is always room for growth, improvement, new skills, new ways of engaging. And just because somebody is in that space of compete to win, and they may be in that with you, or you might be in that with them, it doesn't mean that there might be situations where they've been railroaded. So it might be a learned thing. So it might be, I have to win, otherwise I lose. So the person that has this competing style will be likely to fear being disrespected, not respected, and want to avoid being powerless or losing control. Collaboration. This one is the optimum. This is your goal. This is where we want to get to in a healthy relationship. It requires the most work. It requires the most time, the highest levels of skills, and it can also mean that you've also been through some of the other things. Okay, so before collaboration, you might have avoided it, you might have accommodated, you might have got to a competing level or whichever, and then it might come to a point where, like, okay, we're either going to chuck this relationship in or we need to collaborate. And that might even involve getting a counselor or a therapist to work with a couple to reach that collaborative space, because maybe the skills aren't there or they're not being able to see the big picture. Essentially, if you're in conflict, you're very focused, hyper-focused on the problem. And it's about being able to zoom out and get some bigger picture about what is really important. Because if you're prioritizing winning that situation, then obviously that's of high value to you, especially if it's got to a big conflict in a relationship. But only collaboration will really properly, fully solve things. Because if you think about it, if you're doing the compromise all the time, there's going to be always that, yeah, but you this and I that, and I compromised here and you compromised there. If you're giving in, then there's going to be the resentment. If you're avoiding, it's not getting addressed at all. So each person's needs and wants need to be heard and acknowledged and considered, and a real sit down conversation and mutual understanding needs to be achieved. And I'll talk a little bit about some things, some ways that you can lead in a conflict to get to this point if you're dealing with someone who's not wanting to do this. So both partners need to end up happy. So it needs to end in like a smile and a hug and people going, wow, I'm really glad we had this talk. The relationship should be strengthened, the respect should be intact, and trust is being built. So that's a proper solution technique, that when things are properly solved. If there is conflict in relationships and it can't be resolved, or it's happening frequent and repeat, seek a counsellor, because conflict is going to lead to, destruction. And when we're in a relationship, our goal obviously is to build something that is stable and loving and will support us in our lives, and to have that connection over a long period of time. I mean, you can go and find another partner, but you're just going to build more history and have different conflicts. So without a collaborative conflict resolution attitude and willingness to be partaking and work together, problems just won't be solved. So how do you get to collaboration with a partner who is either avoiding, or perhaps they're a competitor, so they just don't want to back down or even talk about it, because they might even use things like ridicule, insults, name calling, belittling, etc., to try and get their way. I want to talk a little bit about that. So I'm going to talk about the avoiders first. So avoiders, they're tough to deal with because they just don't want to talk about anything at all. And they're likely to be passive aggressive as well. So that's where I don't want to talk about it, but I'm going to make snide comments or do little things that are hurtful or just not kind. That is toxic. And a competitor, they're just going to want to bully. They're just going to win at any cost. So we've talked about the insults and the destructive tactics. So both of those are possibly going to use some destructive tactics. And this is also, interestingly, really common when you're dealing with children. If you think about it, they're either going to have a tantrum to get their own way, or they're just going to not want to, just avoid it altogether. So if I was dealing with an avoidant, this is not an exhaustive, there's probably many other ways to deal with this, but this is just a suggestion from me. Write a letter. If somebody's avoiding speaking about something, write a letter. That way they can read it. It's non-confrontational. Request that they do actually read it. Like, take this, I want you to just read it in your own time. And in the letter, use a feedback sandwich. So what a feedback sandwich is, it's where you start with a positive, then you introduce the feedback, the problem, and then you finish with something positive again. So you could start with, why the relationship's so important, what you love about the person, what is even good in what's important and good about the situation that's the problem. Like, the great thing about this problem is, then introduce the problem, and introduce it from a sense of how you understand it, but also how it makes you feel. And then move to the positive outcome that you would love to see, and go right to the end. Like, I'd love for us to really have solved this, for me to feel like I can trust you, and, like, what is it that you want? And focusing on the emotions and the safety, like that the relationship will be great at the end, and maybe some things that you'd like to see in that solution. Make it safe. And avoidant feels unsafe in conflict and fears conflict. So this can be a learned thing. Maybe they experienced conflict in the past, or had bad experiences with conflict, or they just can't, their nervous system can't take it. Now let's talk about the competitor. They fear losing, and it could be an ego thing. So I probably think of a counter loss, because there's always something bigger to lose in conflict, isn't there? So if you give them a counter loss to consider, then that puts two things on the table. But it's very hard to do that with a competitor, because they're likely to resort to, blank face kind of bullying. So it might be easier to write to them as well. I find writing really constructive, because it doesn't have an emotional tone, and people can actually absorb your words. So in this, acknowledge their view, and make sure that you express that you respect it, both them, and you value that view, because this is really important with somebody that's a competitor. Tell them what the win will cost them, so that there's going to be a consequence if they're not willing to sit down and collaborate on this. So that's a consequence of another loss. And tell them what you want instead. So appeal to their desire for respect. Respect is going to be a high value in these people. Respect, and the winning part is going to give them a sense of importance and control and respect. So make it respectable for them to collaborate with you. So all relationships will experience some kind of conflict. That's how we rub each other's edges off. Like when you polish a stone, you're going to chuck it in a tumbler with other stones, and there's going to be that friction that polishes. But there should always be rules about how we interact with each other in relationship, and creating a home that's peaceful and safe and respectful. So the rules that I like are no name calling, no insulting, no criticizing, no profanity, and no screaming. So we don't want, you're an effing idiot, and like, you're always stupid, and like, why are you doing this, and F this and F that, and at the top of your lungs. That's like basic crappy, horrible, awful environment to be in. It's an awful relationship to be in. It's actually abuse. And it's a really, really poor example to children, because you're basically just like a kettle boiling. You're just like, there's just nothing healthy about that. You're not going to get anything. You're not really even protecting yourself. If somebody is screaming at you like that, or using any of those things, even name calling without screaming, any of it, just the whole thing, I would use the following, and that is to say, I won't accept being spoken to like that. I won't accept you screaming. I won't accept whatever it is you won't accept. I won't accept it. I don't accept that from you. And when you are ready for an adult discussion, let me know. And this is just not good enough. That's the message that you're getting across. Basically, like, I'm not dealing with you in that context. I won't accept it from you. And we will revisit this when you can actually behave like an adult. Postpone, remove access, try again, and make sure you seek support, because if you're going through that, that's going to be quite stressful for you as well. Don't get stuck in the problem. Zoom out onto the big picture. This is just a moment in time in your relationship. It is not your whole relationship. There are good things in your relationship as well. And let me just turn the page. I've got some notes here on basically some tips. your first reaction is likely to be destructive. I've known this in myself. It's like whatever you just want to blah onto somebody, whether it's a physical blah or a verbal blah or a run or anything, it's going to be destructive, not constructive. Take a pause. There is like a pause, and your prefrontal cortex is responsible for impulse control. Put your focus right here and just pull a break, take a pause, and just move into observer. So you can just step out and see, like, there's the other person, there's you, this is a big situation, zoom right out and see that in all moments of time in your life, this is just one little moment, and it's not going to hurt to just not react and wait until you've got a better response. When we're hurt, we tend to either want to lash back or shut down. So it's like, yep, whatever. And what we actually should be doing is being vulnerable and honestly and openly expressing the feeling. So someone says to you, yeah, well, you know, whatever, I'm not going or doing or whatever they're saying, you know, saying you're wrong, whatever. And then you use an I feel statement. So it's about saying, I feel really punched in the guts hearing you say that to me, or I feel like just whatever the thing is, really hurt, really sad, and try and bring it into your body. So hurt, sad, upset, you know, distressed, whatever. They're a word that tells you a feeling, but you can say the feeling, like, I feel really shaky in my legs and I feel like my words are having trouble coming out because I'm really upset about this argument we're having right now. I feel like I just want to go run into my room and cry. I feel like my heart is hurting. I've got a lump in my throat. Express those things, because people cannot criticize, like they cannot. You're giving them no attack there. There's no attack in saying those things. Telling somebody that you're feeling like really distressed in physical sensations is not a counter argument to what they're saying. Avoid blame statements because they break connection. So if I say, oh, you this, and yeah, that's because you, and you always, and you never. So it's a powerless position when you're blaming. You're basically, I have a thing, never justify, defend, or explain, because if somebody's attacking you, you're just giving away your power. And I don't mean that as in like that you've got to be the powerful one. I mean it more in the sense that you're actually pushing yourself down into where you're no longer in your own power. So any kind of blanket phrases like you always blah, 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 and you never blah, 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 are really destructive and not moving towards resolution. Try and stay specific, like when you said that, I felt this, rather than, or when you did that, it made me believe that you didn't love me, or whatever. The specific stuff, not generalized. And when we're angry, it can make us really reckless. And that recklessness is actually covering up the real thing, which is the hurt underneath. And it can make us really feel powerful because we move into like an action state. Either in our imagination, we might be like, oh, you know, I'm going to this and I'm going to that, and I'm just imagining blah, 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 blah. It makes you feel a little bit more powerful. Or by actually doing. So you'll be like, right, that's it. And you go upstairs and you start packing your bags, and, you know, you plan out how you're going to, you know, live for the next 10 years and how sorry they're going to be. But if possible, if you can shift it back to what's underneath, just drop through the anger, and underneath is going to be hurt. So that anger is going to keep you fighting, running, attacking, etc., defending yourself basically. And your blood, it actually causes tunnel vision. Your blood rushes into your arms and legs to fight, and you have like very little impulse control. So bring your body back down. Really focus into your body. Your body is going to be doing a lot of stuff in conflict. Strategies for getting to that collaboration stage is you move into collaboration stage. So if a full collaboration is two people listening, hearing, understanding, then if you move into your half, then that at least means that one of you is already there. So ask the other person, help me understand what your point, help me understand what you mean, help me understand everything, you know, your side. And then just avoid that impulse to get back into the argument. So when they're saying, yeah, this and that, and you're thinking, that's not even true, that's not what happened, you everything you're saying is wrong. Okay, just step out, disengage the fight cog, that's the gear that's been engaged, and just actually listen. And let them fully exhaust. Ask questions, ask qualifying questions. So when you said that, did you mean this? Make sure you fully understand. Just say, I want to understand. Can you tell me more about this? Can you tell me more about when you said that I never listened to you? Can you, and just really get into that space where you are acting like a collaborator. There was also a thing I remember, this is actually from a movie where two guys had been, I think it was a father and son, they'd been fighting for decades or something, and one of them said, I'm just let's both say to each other what we'd really love to hear the other person say to us. And that always stuck in my mind, because sometimes when I'm in a conflict with my partner, with my husband, I will think to myself, what is it I actually really wish that he would say to me right now? What would make this all better if he just said it? And I've tried a couple of times using this and said to him what I wish he'd say to me. And genuinely, you've got to be able to genuinely deliver it. And it actually does work. Usually what's happening is that whatever you want them to say to you is what they want you to say to them as well. So, I mean, we're all just very similar. And if you're in an argument and you feel misunderstood and unvalued and like your point of view doesn't matter and all that kind of stuff, maybe it's a good thing to say, look, I really care about how you feel and what you think, and I really respect your point of view, and I'd really like to understand a little bit more about what it is that you're trying to stand for in this discussion, because we obviously feel like we're disagreeing right now, and if I can understand a little bit better, then maybe I'll be able to understand enough to either agree with you or be able to explain what it is that I'm trying to say as well. So ask them what it is that they are proposing as a solution. Like, what's the solution here? What do you think the solution is? If you're too emotional right now, request a timeout. Say, look, I'm just feeling really shaky, like I can't think right now. I feel like I'm just too emotional. And go and calm your nervous system down. Remember, a lot of this is in your body, so calm your nervous system down, your physical nervous system down, and really pay attention in conflict to what's going on in your physical state, because your body is involved in this conflict. It's not just your head or whatever. You're really physically in the conflict. Okay, so conflict is an opportunity for us to change. It's an opportunity to grow. It's an opportunity to communicate and improve. It's good practice for you to listen, to stop reacting and have some responses instead, and be able to negotiate. Resolving conflict is a skill that will help you in all your relationships. But remember, if you are experiencing abuse, do not stay in an unsafe relationship. Respect is your birthright and safety is your birthright. You physically deserve to be safe and respected and loved. They are your birthrights. And I'd like to wish you all a happy Valentine's Day for yesterday. So today is the 15th of February. And if you haven't already, please subscribe to my YouTube channel, Naomi Stockman, My Local Hypnosis, and support my content, because I do put a lot of effort into preparing and delivering these videos so that I can spread the information. And I also am a avid watcher of other people's content. So have a beautiful day. Naomi Stockman, My Local Hypnosis.